Welcome to Create More Intimacy, a podcast for men. I'm Elisa Stoddard, and I help successful men stop chasing sex and start building real connection so they finally feel close, connected, and wanted again. There's a role that your wife may be playing that you don't even see. She's scanning the room before she speaks, and she watches your face, listens for your tone, and decides whether it's a good moment to bring something up or to stay quiet. She smooths things over before they escalate. She softens her words. She preps the kids. She redirects conversations. She absorbs tension so that things don't blow up. You may not think of yourself as defensive. You may think you're just reacting, defending yourself, trying not to be blamed or misunderstood. But over time, something subtle happens. She becomes the emotional manager of the relationship. I promise you it's not because she wants control. It's because someone has to carry the weight of what goes unaddressed. She takes the impact. So her partner, who gets defensive, doesn't have to sit with the discomfort long enough to grow or change anything. And the cost of that is intimacy. In this episode, I want to talk about defensiveness. Not in a dramatic way, but in the quiet ways it trains your partner to stop coming to you for support. How it teaches her to handle the emotional impact so you don't have to. And why that pattern keeps you disconnected, even when you're trying. If you've ever wondered why she seems distant and guarded, exhausted maybe, this may be part of what's happening. Welcome to episode 40, Why Jokes and Defensiveness Kill Emotional Connection. When most men hear the word defensiveness, they picture some big, obvious argument, raised voices, someone shutting down and shouting, perhaps. But that's not usually how it actually looks. More often, defensiveness shows up as explaining yourself, correcting her, correcting details, wanting to be understood before you slow down enough to understand her or the situation. And sometimes I see it show up as jokes that are ill-timed, maybe a sarcastic comment or a joke with sexual undertones. Something that's honestly meant to lighten the mood or move past the moment to avoid contention. I know it feels harmless to you, and often you think it's helpful because you're trying to keep things from getting too heavy. You're trying to not make it a big deal. But what's really happening is that you're stepping out of the emotional moment instead of staying in it with her. Jokes do that. So does defensiveness. They both let you avoid sitting with discomfort long enough to take responsibility for how it landed. And your partner feels that. She feels that she has to slow things down. She has to choose her words carefully. Decide whether it's a good time or whether it's better to just let something go. That's where this scanning starts. She starts paying hyper attention to your tone and your mood, like when you walk in the door. What is your stress level going to look like today? She starts adjusting so that things don't escalate or turn into something that she has to clean up later. She doesn't want to control situations, like in the sense of getting what she wants. She controls them because she wants peace. She wants to avoid contention. This is where so many men get confused. They think that they're being easygoing or playful or reasonable. They don't realize that avoiding the moment teaches her that she'll have to carry it all herself instead. Over time, that changes how close she feels to you, even when you're trying and things feel like they should be going better. In order to illustrate this, I want to slow this down for you with a picture that you may recognize. And this is something that a lot of families that I have worked with go through. A lot of men talk about these dynamics. So picture this. It's the end of the day and everyone's tired and dinner kind of went sideways. Some comment was made, nothing dramatic, but it just lands wrong. You know it. You feel it immediately. You tighten up and you feel that urge to explain, or you just make a joke to make it go away. Maybe you say something like, "Oh, I was just kidding," or "That's not what I meant." Before anything escalates, your wife steps in. She changes the subject. She makes eye contact with the kids. She cracks a joke of her own. She redirects the energy so things don't go south. From the outside, it looks like teamwork. It looks like both of you are trying to keep things from blowing up. Like she's good at keeping things calm, right? What's actually happening, though, is that she's absorbing the impact so no one else has to. The kids notice this long before anyone ever talks about it. And in a lot of families, they never talk about it. Kids learn who to watch. They learn which moods in the home matter. They learn when to stay quiet. They also learn that their mom smooths things over so the emotional temperature stays manageable. You might think you're protecting them by keeping things light or just moving past it quickly, but what they are really learning is that tension doesn't get addressed in this house. It gets managed. Over time, your wife carries more and more and more of that responsibility. It's not just the managing the kids part, the managing timing, the tone, the reactions, so everyone else can relax. And this is the part most men don't see until it's pointed out. When she's busy managing the emotional environment, she is not connecting with you or anyone else. She's not resting. She's not bringing things to you that maybe she'd prefer to talk about that really matter. She's working to keep the peace, and that is absolutely exhausting. And it changes how safe she feels to you and how close she's willing to get to you. Okay, guys, listen, none of this makes you a bad husband or a bad father. These patterns usually you observe in your home when you were growing up. And it's because you never learned a different way to handle that discomfort. You watched your family, your dad, avoid and joke or blow up. But what you do know is that those things don't go away on their own. They get passed down, and in that moment, you start seeing really clearly what is usually the moment where things have a chance to shift. Let me even dial this in a little bit more. This doesn't really involve the kids. It's more about what happens with you and your wife. So what I see a lot is that it gets late at night and people aren't at their best. They're tired. Maybe you're already in bed and the house is quiet and your wife says something like, "Hey, can I talk to you about something?" And it's just simple, not raised voices and not a tone that like sets you off necessarily. But before she even finishes that sentence, you feel it. You tighten up. You sense that whatever this is, it might turn into something uncomfortable. So your response is super quick. Maybe you explain what you mean. You clarify a detail or you make a joke to soften it. You assume what she's going to bring up. Maybe you say something like, "Gosh, I didn't even realize it was that big of a deal." From your perspective, I know you're trying to keep things calm. You're trying to avoid long and heavy conversations at the end of an already long and maybe terrible day. From her perspective, something else just happened. She notices how fast you moved away from the moment and how little space there was for what she was about to say. How quickly she now has to decide whether this conversation is worth continuing. So she shrugs it off, says, "Never mind," or "It wasn't that important," and you both go to sleep. Nothing exploded. No argument occurred. There's no obvious damage. But honestly a small window closed. And that's how this pattern usually works. It's quiet. It happens in the ordinary moments, the ones that don't feel significant enough to even examine. But the truth is, they add up over time. When men hear the word responsibility, I know lots of you brace. You think that it means like admitting that you're wrong or taking the blame or saying the right words fast enough to just make this problem go away. And that's not at all what I'm talking about. Responsibility in these moments isn't about being wrong. It's about staying present instead of stepping out. It's noticing inside yourself that urge to explain or joke or defend and choosing not to act on it right away. It's letting that moment breathe long enough to understand how something landed, not just how you intended it. Most defensiveness isn't really calculated. It's just automatic. You speak so quick. Your nervous system is telling you, this feels uncomfortable, and you reach for something familiar. That's when you turn to jokes. That's when you explain yourself or try to defend yourself. Correcting details also does that. All of those things create distance between you and the emotional moment that otherwise you'd be taking responsibility for. Responsibility looks a lot quieter. It sounds like slowing down instead of filling the space with your discomfort. It sounds like listening without preparing a response, because you guys know you miss half the conversation when you're thinking of what you're going to say. It sounds also like staying curious when part of you just wants to shut down. This doesn't mean that you just agree with everything she says. It means that you stay with her long enough that she doesn't feel like she has to manage you and your emotions because of what she said. And when you do that, something important changes. She doesn't have to scan as much. She doesn't brace herself. She doesn't have to decide whether it's worth the effort to bring up something that she thinks is important. She can just talk. That's the shift that creates emotional intimacy. And I know you guys are looking for this. You just don't recognize it as emotional intimacy. You go straight for the sex part. I know you don't realize it yet, but this shift will go a long way for what you really want, that connection you want with her. It isn't because fewer issues come up. It is because you close the gap and there's less distance. It also takes less effort and less emotional negotiation. This is also where men start to see how joking has been part of opting out. I know you probably don't even recognize that that's what's happening. You don't do it in a malicious way. It's just a habit. Humor has become a way to stay likable and easygoing and unbothered, while quietly avoiding responsibility for the emotional moment. Learning to stay takes practice. And my observation is that most men were never taught how to do this, especially when they feel exposed or misunderstood or like that their authority is going to be challenged. If you are listening to this right now and feeling a little bit uncomfortable, that makes perfect sense. This isn't easy to hear, especially if you've always thought of yourself as someone who tries, someone who cares about his family, someone who doesn't want conflict. This isn't about making you the bad guy. It's really about helping you see the impact of your patterns that probably kept you safe early in life, but no longer serve you in your relationships. And if you're thinking, well, I don't do this all the time, I believe you. You're probably right. I'm not asking for perfection. What I really am trying to bring to you is awareness. I want you to be open to how someone else might be experiencing you and difficult conversations. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And you will start to notice moments where you deflect. You will start to notice moments where A joke feels so much easier than staying present with something hard that she's going to say. These are moments where maybe even defensiveness and justification feels reasonable. But I'm telling you, it costs closeness. And awareness is where this change takes root. That awareness is where change actually starts. You don't have to try harder. And I'm not asking you to monitor every word that you're saying, but I am asking you to learn a different way to stay emotionally available and present when it really matters. These patterns don't just shift because now I've brought them to your attention and you understand them or think you do. They show up when you're tired or stressed or caught off guard. And that's exactly the moment when it is so hard to respond differently than historically you have. This is the work that I do with men, helping them see these moments clearly and slow them down and bring the tool set for emotional skills that create safety and connection inside your relationship. We're not going for just fewer arguments. We're trying to build connection here. If you are realizing that this might be part of what has been keeping you stuck and you want help changing it, you can book a call with me. We're going to look at what's actually happening in your relationship and whether working together makes sense. I'm not going to ask you to overhaul who you are completely, but I will support you in learning how to stay present when it matters. Take care. We'll see you next time. Thanks for being here. If something in this episode hit home, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. It helps more men find the support they need. And if you are ready to get help or take the next step, you'll find the link to book a free call in the show notes. I'll see you next time.